Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. And good evening for people who are joining us from very far east countries. How is everyone doing today? If you can hear me okay, give me indication and we'll quickly get started. Just by indication, I mean tell me the next week activities you are planning to do. Are you traveling? Are you going to complete a project? Are you starting something new? Or anything which can you share publicly, which you are excited about for the next week. I'll share mine. I'm going to Sweden for a customer visit, so I would be there, and some of my colleague would be traveling to Germany. There is a AWS summit in Berlin, so interesting day for all of us. Obviously, meeting customer is always interesting to hear their stories. Let me know what everyone is going to do. Kapil is going to New York. Yeah, there is a conference there. Thank you. And people are joining from Bangalore. I'll quickly add everyone onto the stage also so that we can say hi to all of you. So I'm going to add Richard. Then we have Sharik. Then we have Kapil with us. Obviously, Parna is here. She would be presenting. And then we have Prasad also. So all of us are here and we would be happy to answer as many questions as you have. Now, I'll quickly go through what the agenda is and then we will move forward. And keep your questions coming. All of our team members are there to help you out. I'll quickly add the slide deck and feel free to ask as many questions as you have. What we are talking today is about architect for resilience. We need to ensure that whatever we are building, it's a simple architecture or complicated, it is an in-house application or it is a customer facing application. We need to ensure that everything we do is resilient, and we will be focusing on how you can achieve resiliency in any architecture. That is the main agenda for today, and we'll discuss about the few services in this case. If I talk about where we are currently, so we are on week 6, 11th May, and we'll talk about resilient architecture and not just theoretical concept, but what can be done to implement that resiliency, how load balancing work, how auto scaling works, and again we will do it into a role play fashion. So hopefully you would enjoy, and your feedback is important, so please keep sharing your feedback so that we can improve this session and give you the most from the 1.5 hour you joined with us. All right, thank you everyone, and I'll add now Parna and Sharik to the stage, and they would be acting as a customer and acting as a AWS consultant. Over to you, Parna and Sharik.
All right. Hello, everyone. I hope you all can hear me and see me clearly. Hello, Sharik. How are you doing?
Hi, Pona. I'm doing great. Thank you. Hope I'm audible, loud and clear to everybody, to you and rest of the audience.
Yes, you are.
Okay, perfect, perfect.
All right, Sharik. So I hope all your AWS workloads are running top notch. No trouble so far.
Yes, that's what we will talk about today. And first of all, thank you for helping us with this AWS journey in the last few weeks. We have gone through from no workload on AWS to a lot of workload on AWS. So at the moment, we have this hybrid architecture, right? So
Mm-hmm.
where we have our own data centers at the moment, and we do
Okay.
have about, I would say, 20-30% workload at the moment on
Okay.
AWS, and we
Okay.
are kind of in the next few months, our aim is to increase that percentage gradually, and put
Sure.
more of the workloads on AWS on cloud. So yeah, thank you for that. We have had some really interesting discussions in the last few weeks. We did that, and that really helped internally as well when we talk to you, and then when we go back to our developers, our you know, sysadmins and DevOps engineers, it really helps us a lot, right?
Sure.
So thank you for that.
So we
Um,
are very happy to help. So yeah, so how can I help you today?
Yes. So today, let me tell you about a situation which has happened, I think it's like about 10-15 days back.
Mm-hmm.
And then we realized that we have to, before we put more workloads, we have to tackle this situation first. And the situation is that few weeks back, I would say about 15 days back, we had an incident with our application when
Okay.
it was down for, I think, about 10 hours, right?
All
And
right.
it did incur in a business loss. We had our users complaining. It did not really, it did not really did well to our image in the public, as you can imagine. So we had a lot of, ruckus on different social media platforms. It did not really look good, in the face of the, for our audience and for us as well. So what we want to understand from you
Mm-hmm.
is how do we make it see, we have now instances, we have containers, we have some very few serverless workloads as well. We are kind of experimenting with those things at the moment,
Right.
right? But what do we do? Like, what are the, I mean, I don't know, it could be an industry best practice, or is it something AWS might offer us, or might give us in guidelines on those lines. So the situation is very simple. We have workload up and running, we have things up and running, but what if something fails? That's what we not want to understand. We want to understand specific services if you have to offer, or is there something about the architectural guidelines, and how I can avoid that this 10-hour downtime never happens with my application in future.
All right. So, definitely, I can guide you and give you some best practices. Looks like we need to have a plan for designing a
Definitely.
highly resilient architecture over here. So, obviously, you faced some trouble this far, but I'm hoping that after our discussion, we will be able to make some changes there as well. So,
Mhm.
firstly, let me just give you a little overview about what resiliency is. So obviously you have been facing disruptions now. Your ability to design a workload such that it is robust enough to ward off any kind of disruptions, avoid downtimes, that is what resilience is. Now, to achieve resilience, obviously we have a twofold plan. Okay, one is high availability, that is where we are looking to design our software as well as our infrastructure in such a way that there is always redundancy, right?
Mhm.
Now, but this doesn't happen on its own. Obviously, along with that, we also have to plan for disaster recovery, right? So disaster recovery
Yes.
is for you to return to normalcy, right? Now
Mhm.
something has happened, to come back to normal you need to do something extra that cannot be managed only by high availability, because high availability is going to only look at your designing aspects of it, okay, and
Mhm.
that's going to tackle your primary region. Whereas disaster recovery is going to make sure that you have a recovery region or a recovery site in place, and
Mhm.
you're going to use some good practices like backups, replication, etc.,
Mhm.
to ensure both these work together. Now, you
Okay.
did mention that you had some issues in terms of customer experience, but let me tell you that
Why don't
it's
you go
not
back to the
only.
previous slide?
Yeah,
Just have a quick
yeah,
question, just to understand
yeah,
if I got this right.
yeah.
So again, we have a lot of workloads on-prem at the moment, and we have these. I know, good that you mentioned about that DR thing,
Hmm,
because we have primary sites and then we have DR sites. There is still in our data centers we have that thing. So
right.
correct me if I'm wrong, but like when we say high availability, uh, is it focused on the fact that on day-to-day operations, if something goes wrong, how we can tackle that quickly and come back from those failures? Whereas when we talk about disaster recovery, it's more about when the whole data center is down for some reason. Probably there is an outage like in complete London or NYC, or the whole
Yeah.
Mumbai city is down for some reason. I think, am I correct in segregating these two things?
Yeah, so in high availability you can take care of scenarios when there is suddenly a surge of demand or load, or say your host servers go down, or an entire
Um,
rack of servers go down. In that case, your high availability will be able to take care of it.
mhm.
Whereas disaster recovery, like you rightly said, god forbid the internet is down,
Right,
right, or
right,
the entire cloud provider services are down, right,
right.
or say you have multiple workloads, and you have selected a region where to deploy them, but
Right.
the whole region is down, right?
Mm.
So that's where disaster recovery will come into the picture. We will talk about that
We-
a little later as well, and probably you'll get an idea when I show you some kind of best practices and architectures that you can opt for. Yeah,
mhm. So yeah, we
what's your
generally say that, if you have in disaster recovery is equivalent to if there is a tsunami attack or if there is a Godzilla attack.
right? Right,
All right.
absolutely.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for that.
So, as I was saying, that you are obviously facing customer experience, poor customer experience. But let me tell you that that's not the only problem that you're going to face in the long term. If you do not design for a high resilient software system, there's going to be business impact and financial impact as well. Why
Mhm.
business impact? Obviously, your reputation loss will happen. People will lose trust in your product or in your
Definitely.
services, right? And
Definitely.
financial loss, if your services are down, people cannot do any operations on your site.
Mhm.
You lose customers. There's also a operational cost, that the time you take to remit
Very true.
cost, you lose data now, and data is the latest gold, right?
So
So,
I think we have encountered all three problems what you're mentioning. Good
all
that you have
three.
such a nicely structured thing, because we did have business impact for those many
Right,
hours. We
right,
did have a financial impact because this was our main business application which went down, and of course our
right,
users were not able to do their business, purchase our services.
right,
And yes, user experience, of course, that did not help at all there. Definitely. So
right.
yes, we had
So
that problem.
user experience, sometimes you can just tweak a little bit of configuration and get things a little better, like
Mhm.
latency issues and all. But for a long term resilient architecture, you need to plan for it. You can't just go and make a little tweak and get things running, right?
Okay.
So yeah, so let me just tell you about some of the mechanisms or techniques by which you can build a resilient system. So I've just enlisted few techniques over here. There are a whole lot of them, but we are going to be focusing today mostly on the infrastructure high availability part. Like, we are going to be talking about load balancing, we're going to be talking about auto scaling. So these are some techniques
Wow,
in
you are
terms of,
giving me so many words there: load balancing, auto scaling, caching.
yeah,
I guess
yeah,
we are
I'm
going
technical.
to dissect them one by one. I'm hoping
Definitely.
that. Okay, okay.
Yeah. So we are going to be looking at the load balancing and which are the services which is going to help you with that. Okay. So we
Mhm,
have elastic load balancers over here. So I'm
mhm,
going to dive deep into that.
mhm,
In terms of scaling your compute resources on
mhm,
demand whenever automatically, so that's where auto scaling and auto scaling group we are going to be discussing about. And of
mhm,
course, we always want automation, so that's where self healing part of it comes. And both these services, elastic load balancer and auto scaling group, have a self healing feature to that. Okay.
mhm.
Apart from that, you can see many more over here. You can see timeout, retry patterns, caching.
Yeah,
These,
I have a question on that, Purna. Like,
sure, sure.
I understand a few of them. I don't understand all of them.
Yeah,
And as you can imagine, I will go back to my teams and I will engage the people who will implement these things one by one once I understand from you.
definitely. Yeah.
But I'm kind of confused. Should I involve my developers? Should I involve my, I don't know, DevOps and SRE folks, or who we are looking at the moment? Who is the right person here?
All right. So let me give you a breakdown of which areas
All
to
right.
look at. So today we are going to be focusing more on building resilient infrastructure. Okay.
Mhm,
So when we're talking about infrastructure, you see these three: redundancy. How do we use redundant availability zones? How do we use redundant data centers? We do not have a single point of failure, that's what we call it. Okay, so
okay.
no single point of failure. How do we distribute our load using load balancers so that our backend services are not overwhelmed? What failover or switchover strategies we have? So we spoke about disaster recovery, there
Mhm,
also we have a failover strategy. So all this is related to infrastructure resilience.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you were saying, when will we involve, say, your software developers or
Right.
system design specialists?
Mm-hmm.
This is where they will come into the picture. Okay, so even in terms of your software design, you have to build a resilient system. So these are
Mm-hmm.
some of the patterns, like circuit breaker. This is just like your electric circuit, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if a certain microservice, say you have a microservice based architecture, and a
Mm-hmm.
certain microservice is not responding well, it's not working, so temporarily you'll get it out of service, so you
Mm-hmm.
will not send request to it. So that's your circuit breaker. Or we have isolation patterns, where you completely isolate a service while it's not working, so it doesn't cause interconnected failures.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can build your application such that they could do timeouts and retries, and you have the backup mechanism. So you try, you retry it, and if there's a failure, you give it some more time and then you retry again. And
So let me come
timeouts,
back to
yeah,
these two, like circuit breaker and bug head. I believe this is there in the microservices architecture being used
yes,
a lot,
yes, yeah,
and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong again. Like the idea is that you have 10, 15, 20 different components in your application, and if let's say one component goes wrong, it does not result in other components failing and
yes,
overall application failure as well, right? And
yes, so,
okay, and I believe Amazon does something similar. Like you have the front end and you have multiple services.
right,
Even if something is not working, the users can still see the page. They can still log into the app, and
right,
they don't even realize that something went wrong behind the scenes. I guess
right.
that's the magic potion you are using,
That's
right?
the
Okay.
yes, that's the
Okay.
reason, loosely coupling. When we create a
Mhm.
microservice based architecture, that's why loosely coupling is very important, because we don't want interconnected failure, right?
Oh,
So that's the magic of microservices.
mhm.
All right,
So
and
what I gather
yeah,
so far is that it's not just the infrastructure, it's not just the few code changes. You have to kind of take a holistic approach, and one by one, we
yes,
have to kind of
yes,
implement these changes at all the layers, not just one
all
single.
the layers.
Hmm.
Yeah, yes.
Makes sense.
So
Makes
now
sense.
that you said all the layers, that reminds me that we need to build resilience at
Ah,
every
right.
tier.
Correct.
So as you know, we usually have the three tiered architecture, right? So
Hmm.
we have infrastructure, applications, databases, and all built into these three tiers. So we
Hmm.
have to take care of resilience in all of them. So for example, infrastructure, like I said, we can make use of our load balancers. Okay,
Hmm.
so we can make use of auto scaling groups. We can deploy our applications in different geographical regions. Okay, so that's also like a backup pattern or a
Yes.
mechanism.
Hmm.
Yeah, in terms of application, I just showed you some of the techniques, where you have a circuit breaker pattern, you have retry handling, error handling, timeouts. This is where you're going to be handling that, right?
Hmm.
And finally,
Sorry for that.
data, right? Databases. Data stores are really important to us. We need to ensure we don't have data loss. So some of the mechanisms over there would be to replicate that data, take constant backups, or mechanisms like sharding as well. Okay, so we do it at three tiers. Do you want me to walk through some examples for you, which will be able to convey
I
the message
mean,
to you better?
yes, if I can have one of, I mean, so far as what I understand is yes, infrastructure. What are we going to focus today? That would be my first question. Like, I see that I need to involve my DevOps and SRE people. I
Hmm.
have to involve my developers.
Hmm.
And looks the when I look at the slide now, which you're showing, I definitely need to involve my database experts as well. So these are the three
Right.
minimum folks there. What are we
Yes.
focusing on today? Because of course I'm assuming we can't tackle all of them. It's going to be a very long discussion. We have
Right.
hardly like 30-40 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll give you some overview with respect to infrastructure
All right.
resilience,
That's
and
yeah.
a little bit of overview of how we can create a resilient infrastructure, taking care of the database part as well. So a
Yeah.
little overview of that as well.
Right,
So
right,
let me walk you through some examples. So this is one example of partly resilient. Why I'm saying partly resilient, you can see
right.
that there is a load balancer over here. So obviously the
Yeah,
end
I can
user is sending in requests.
I
Yeah,
can I can already see a standard,
yeah.
three-tier architecture where you have a front end, you have a back end, and then you have a
Hmm.
database. So I can see that already.
But do
Right.
you see any problem here? at any
Uh,
tier?
I do see a few problems. I'm not sure if there is any caching. I mean, probably that's not
Hmm,
there at the moment. But yeah, I mean, what if I can see two servers? What happens if both of them go down for some reason? Because that's what
right.
happened with us last 15 days back.
Right, right. So you can see that over here we have a load balancer which is distributing. So if even if this server goes down, we have one of them up here. However, there is tight coupling at this level. You do not see any kind of resilient mechanism over here. So I'll show
Mhm.
you another architecture where that will be sorted. In
Okay.
terms of your database, you can see there is a replication layer where it's constantly being replicated. So here also we've built in resilience. Now let's look
Okay.
at a
So
multi.
wait a second.
Yeah,
Let me kind of understand, because I'm a
yeah,
slow learner. Can you
sure.
go back to the previous slide?
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, so database is being replicated. I'm assuming you have a primary DB and the whole database,
Hmm.
the copy, there's being a copy made to a standby database. So is
Yes.
that a standard backup or is that a replication? If something goes wrong, because we have two models, right? In one case, we
Right.
just take a backup and we have to restore if something goes
Yeah.
wrong. And the other
Yes.
model is where I remember doing this in Oracle and SQL databases where it's a live replication happening of every single transaction. And if something goes wrong with the primary DB, you just promote the standby to the primary. So which one is it here?
Okay. So let me show you three cases where I'll be able to clarify to you. Take
Perfect.
for instance RDS, okay, and
Mhm.
RDS supports 6 engines, as you know. So in RDS we have something called as a
So wait,
multi
what is
AZ
RDS? What is
architecture,
RDS for now?
relational database service. It's a managed
Okay, it's a
relational database
service from
service.
AWS.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
and what does it do exactly?
So, because it's a managed relational database service, you don't really have access to the underlying EC2 instance. It
Hmm.
has a lot of features wherein we have something called as a multi AZ, which I was getting to right now.
Okay.
Multi AZ deployment, because you were asking me how does this standby or replicas work. So what
Hmm.
happens over here is there is a primary instance in one availability zone, and if you opt for the multi AZ deployment, then
Hmm.
there is a standby in another availability zone. Now you are
Oh,
doing
okay.
your reads and writes from your application to your primary availability zone only. Okay, the standby is not a endpoint that you can read or write from. What
Okay.
happens in case of a disaster is, when a disaster strikes, say this goes down, okay, the whole AZ goes down or the primary server goes down, this standby gets promoted and it becomes your primary.
All
Okay,
right. All
and
right.
they share the same endpoint. So from the application perspective, you don't need to change anything. It will continue. You can continue reading and writing from it.
And
Another thing that you can
there
do,
is no
yes.
transaction losses there as well, right? I mean, that's what I'm
No.
assuming.
So there
Okay.
is synchronous, you can see it's a synchronous
All right. Yes.
uh,
Mm.
replication that is happening over here. So it's always up to date. However, you might say that you have too many read operations and you don't want the reads and writes to compete. So, like you said, we can have something called as read replicas. And these read replicas, there is asynchronous replication here. There is a slight lag over there. But you can have these read replicas either in the same region or in another region or in another account as well. Okay, so
Okay.
that also can serve as your disaster recovery or a backup. Why? Because this can also be promoted into a primary, so that option is also there. Yeah.
So you talked about multi-AZ, which gives me like, primary and a secondary servers, and the secondary can be promoted to primary in case of any eventuality.
Yeah.
And then you talked about read replicas as well,
Yeah.
where you have multiple replicas where we can route the read operations from
Yes.
those CRUD. Okay, okay, makes
Okay.
sense.
The
Yes.
only difference is the standby will automatically get promoted, whereas
Mhm.
in read replica, you will have to manually explicitly go and promote it. Okay. So that's the
So
difference
you're
between.
telling me if I choose multi-AZ in RDS, multi-AZ option,
Mhm.
it creates a replica, and at the same time, if something goes wrong, it automatically promotes the secondary server to the primary DB. And
It
and
creates a standby. Yeah, I
Yeah,
would
so
call it a
the
standby.
standby one to a primary DB, it completely
Yes.
automatically does that, and
Yes.
application fails over to the secondary DB. Like it's all one single operation.
Yes, yes. So
Wow.
they share the
Okay.
same endpoint, so there will be no difference from the application point of view. So this is in case of RDS. Let me show you uh, another NoSQL database also, like DynamoDB. So I'm not sure whether you're using DynamoDB, but you probably you should think
Wow.
about it because it has
DynamoDB,
this.
there are discussions going on at the moment. We have some
Okay.
on-prem CouchDB, Cassandra. We have
Yes.
and we have Mongo, of course. So there are discussions going on. Like when we move to AWS, what are the options? And DynamoDB did come up
Yeah.
in that discussion. So yes, I'm aware of that.
So it's a serverless NoSQL database, and it's got this great feature called as global tables. So when you
Right.
are talking about resilient architectures, multi-region architectures, that's where your DynamoDB global tables will really help you, because as you can see, there are two regions over here. Okay, and in DynamoDB, we also global tables. Both these are active, as you can see, they are active master tables, and they
Mhm.
are in sync continuously, so it's completely managed. You don't have to do anything as a customer. All these DynamoDB master tables in every region are in sync together, and there's continuous backup also which is happening. So now
No,
think of
wait. I
it.
think let me
Yeah.
stop you there and
Yeah.
take a step back. I think I lost you there when you mentioned. So I
Uh-huh.
understand DynamoDB table is the one which is a regional one, right? So you have in one region you create a table, and
Yes.
then you have a front end which is talking to the table, and you have that structure set up.
Yeah.
Why would I create a DynamoDB table in a secondary region or a different region? So can you give me a situation? I'm kind of lost
uh,
here.
Yeah. So it'll be for two purposes. Okay,
Mhm.
one would be if you have customers, global customers in different regions, so that they have a better
Okay.
experience, customer experience, because they'll be talking to the DynamoDB table which is closest to their region. So obviously a better customer experience. That is one reason,
No,
and
but
the
for that,
second is.
don't we use things like we can host front ends in different regions, so we can do caching. Don't we do those things? Why would we create a separate database? Is that
Um, you remember, this is also an active configuration, like I was saying, like this is for disaster
all right? Now I
recovery.
get it. Okay,
Right.
okay,
Yeah. So this is
understand.
for disaster recovery also. That's the second advantage you have here. Say this region goes down.
So the whole
Okay,
table
because.
is getting. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I'm kind of interrupting you a lot just to
Yeah.
understand this properly. So you are telling me the DynamoDB table I created,
Hmm.
let's say in one region, let's say London, and then I
Yeah.
want to create a replica. I mean, not replica. You are talking about that as a global table, right? You're telling that as a global
Yes.
table. So I tell DynamoDB that okay, can I have a global table
Hmm.
in I don't know, Sweden or maybe Singapore?
Right.
So these two tables will have the same data. You're telling me?
Yes. Yes, they'll
Okay.
have the same data. Okay, so
Okay.
they
And
are
they are getting
in sync.
replicated somehow. I'm assuming there is some replication model working behind the
Yes,
scenes.
yes. So they are synchronously getting replicated. Hence, I said they are active, and they are both up to date, right? So
Okay.
there's no data
Nice.
loss between them. So
Okay.
whatever changes you do here are instantly being reflected in the other. So you need not have only two regions. You could have multiple regions as well where there are global tables.
Nice. Okay, that's
Yeah.
an interesting feature because we always have this. I can tell you a practical situation we had a few
Hmm.
years back when we had this. This application was there for European people, and this was again we did that for Australia as well. This was a
Okay.
sort of a joint campaign, and we tackled the front end. We could just create more instances to EC2 or we had those that time we were using containers, so we can simply go ahead
Right.
and put more front end in these multiple regions. But the
Hmm.
bottleneck was the database because
Data.
you
Right.
have like one single source of truth, right? So
True.
with this architecture, actually, we can have a separate table for the European region, and then we have a separate table for Australia, and then they
Yeah.
can sort of somehow replicate themselves within themselves and get the data all duplicated.
Right.
Great,
Yeah,
great,
and
great.
did you know that we have this thing called databases, global databases, even in Aurora? Okay, so if you've heard about our proprietary database of AWS Aurora,
Aurora, I know.
which
Yeah,
is.
that's one of the
Yeah,
engines within RDS, if I'm not wrong, right? That's
yes,
owned by
yes, and it's
Amazon.
a relational
Okay,
database. Yes,
okay.
so it's compatible with MySQL as well as PostgreSQL, and it also has a similar feature like global tables in DynamoDB. It's called global databases. So
Oh.
again, in terms of disaster recovery scenario over here, you can see we have Aurora global database, and there is a primary cluster. So this is your primary cluster in one region, and there is a secondary cluster maintained in one or more regions. You can have up
Mhm.
to 5 regions where you can have a secondary cluster over there. And what
Okay.
happens over here is, again, there is asynchronous replication. There is a slight lag over here. There is asynchronous replication, and there is a replica. Okay, a read
Mhm.
replica which is there in the secondary cluster. So in your secondary region also, if you wish to keep it active, you can do read operations there. Plus, your Aurora global tables also has this feature called as write forwarding. So
Mhm.
say you don't want to go through that pain of having multiple endpoints, one for reading, one for writing. So
Mhm.
you rather forward all your write statements, your write SQL statements. These are, it's called as write forwarding.
Mhm.
They are sent to the primary node. Okay,
Mhm.
and then it reflects back the changes back to the replica again. Okay, so that option is also there. So you can see that there is a primary node here, there is a read replica here in the primary cluster, and there is a read replica here also. Here what happens when there is a disaster or some kind of disruption,
Mhm.
automatically one of those read replicas which you saw earlier in the secondary cluster will be promoted to become the writer node. Okay, and the write operations you can start doing over there.
And once again,
And
this will be automatic.
yes, this will be
Okay.
automatic.
Okay.
Okay, and then you can see that this is a type of configuration where we can call it, there is pilot light, there is warm standby. So this is one where we have something called as a warm standby. So we have minimal instances. Suddenly when there is traffic coming in, you can see in the previous case
Mhm.
it was inactive, it was not really active and receiving production grade traffic, only a little bit of traffic. But as soon as a disaster happened, suddenly this particular route became active.
Mhm.
Your secondary cluster got promoted to become the primary Aurora cluster.
Mhm.
Even your instances, your application servers scaled. You can see they started
Mhm.
scaling because they're an auto scaling group. Okay, so this is how your disaster recovery is happening, where we've used resilience at all levels. We've used load
Okay. So
balancers, auto
so we are
scaling
using,
group.
along with high availability, we have a solution which is giving us disaster recovery at the same time, like kind
Yes,
of inbuilt. Okay. Okay. We
yes,
didn't
yes,
talk about DR, but let's kind of, it kind of making sense to me. Yes.
right, right.
Mhm. Probably we will talk about that. You mentioned something about pilot light or something on those lines,
Hmm.
right? You talked about that. So I
Yeah.
would probably discuss with you later on what those things
Hmm.
are, because I at the moment I have no clue. So I'll discuss
Right.
with you. Okay.
Sure. So I'll just give you a little overview about what this is, since that we are talking about disaster recovery, because we have generally 4 strategies that we have, and the strategy that an organization like your organization will be picking will
Mm-hmm.
be on the basis of the criticality of the workload, as well as how much time you can afford to lose from the time there is a disruption, right? So we have 4 of these. I was earlier talking to about pilot light and warm standby. But if you want to go with the traditional way, where you are taking backups and snapshots and storing them in your S3 glacier tier, then
Mm-hmm.
backup and restore is the cheapest option. But remember that this will take you time. So when you restore from S3 glacier, it takes you hours, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this could go up to hours. So if your RPO and RTO, where recovery point objective, how much data you can afford to lose, RTO, recovery time objective, how much time you can afford to lose before systems are back up. If you're okay to go to hours, then this is it. This is like non-business critical kind of workloads.
Mm-hmm.
Then
Can
probably
you
a
talk
little,
about?
yeah,
I don't get that RTO and RPO. What are those
yeah.
exactly?
So,
Oh, there we
RPO
go.
is
Mm-hmm.
to do with how much data you can afford to lose. So, what does that mean? Suppose every 12 hours you are taking a data backup, okay? Say
Okay.
every 5 a.m. and 5 p.m., right?
Mm-hmm.
And say at 10 a.m., there is a disruption. So effectively between 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. you've lost 5 hours worth of data. So as an organization you will have some
Okay.
SLAs, right? So
Mhm.
you can afford to lose up to, so in this case up to 12 hours of data. Even if you lose, you can resume normal operation. That's RPO. And
So
RTO, yeah.
let me get this. So 12 hours of data, but
Yeah.
what if I tell you that no, we can't lose 12 hours.
Hmm.
At maximum we can lose, let's say, 2 hours of data. Then what
Right.
changes would I need?
So then, as I was saying, then you will have to change your disaster recovery strategy. Then something like backup and restore won't do, right? You
Okay.
can see that goes into hours. So if that's earlier in minutes, or if you want real time failover kind of scenarios, then you'll have to go for pilot light, warm standby, or active active. So as
Mhm.
we go towards the right, you can see the RPO and RTO is decreasing, right? It's constantly
Okay.
decreasing. But
Mhm.
remember that it's going to be a expensive proposition as you're moving towards the right as well, because in pilot light you have your resources in standby. Okay, they
Mhm.
are not turned on as such, but they
Mhm.
are on standby. So that's why you still have to pay for those resources. They are in stop state. In warm standby, you have those resources, but only a small capacity of that. They are not scaled
Mhm.
out for production level. Okay, so
Mhm.
that's why this is a little more expensive. And finally, if it is a mission critical application like financial services or healthcare, where you want real time failover or switchover, as we call,
Mhm.
without any data loss, that's an active active. So you have two identical environments, right? So
Mhm.
if you're going to maintain two identical environments, just imagine it's going to be double your cost, right?
Mhm.
So that depends on the organization which one they should go for.
No,
Hope that
that's
makes sense.
exactly what we have whenever we talk about
Hmm.
disaster recovery sites. So essentially, we are maintaining one primary data center where we have the
Yes.
workload running, and then we have a backup or a disaster recovery site, which is the exact replica.
Right.
So it's good to know that you can actually, apart from active, we can come back and we can do this pilot light where I'm assuming that you have one production site, one production
Hmm.
workload, and then you have a replica. You said it is not running; it's not in running state. So
Yes.
that's where we have it configured, but it is not running. That's what my understanding
Right.
was.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So that's a good point. That way we can save money there, because again, for DR we
Definitely.
have to keep everything up and running. It's double the
Yeah.
cost, as you said.
Yeah.
So
So
good.
your data has to be replicated and up to date, but your
Mhm.
compute resources, if you wish, they can be turned off
Mhm.
and kept.
Okay.
Right. So this is just showing you a holistic picture of all the different mechanisms of disaster recovery. Like you take snapshots and backups. You can your AMIs also, if you think about it, they are also a type of backup, because you
Mhm.
can bring up instances using the same AMI if you copy it into another region. You can restore your EBS volumes from your snapshots if you copy it into another region. You can
Okay.
have cross region replication in services like S3, right?
Mhm.
You can even have infrastructure as code templates like cloud formation, which can bring up another environment within a couple of minutes. Okay, so
Mhm.
these are just showing you certain
No,
mechanisms in which.
let me stop you there. So there are a lot of things, so I'm kind of confused here. I'm not getting everything there. But what I
Yeah.
understand again is that if needed, we can have this multi-region architecture where we can have workloads configured in, again, let's say London and Paris regions
Hmm.
together in parallel, so that if
In
something
fact.
goes wrong with London, you have things being catered from Paris and vice versa.
Right.
That is what we are talking about, right? And you have, I'm
Right.
assuming that you have some mechanism to set up the front end. Front end is never a problem. It's always the back end, right?
Hmm.
So you
Right.
have some way of using those replicas, which we discussed earlier.
Hmm. Yeah.
We talked about those database global tables you mentioned, global databases you mentioned. So that's
Yes.
how you replicate the data between two
Yeah. Keep
regions,
your
right?
data up to date. Yes.
Okay, okay. So probably we'll do a separate deep dive on this thing, because there seems
Surely.
to be a
Yeah.
lot of topics
Yeah.
there.
So
But
we will
yeah,
we
I
will go
understand.
into databases again, and then
Okay,
another meeting that we have. Yeah.
okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. So obviously we've gone in and seen these architectures, but I have not really had a chance to tell you about the load balancing, elastic load balancer service that we have, the auto scaling. So do you want me to give you a little overview about those as well?
You can go, please go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So so basically, if you go to see, there are three types of load balancers. Are you currently using load balancers for
We
any
do.
of
We do.
your workloads?
We have F5. We have at the application level, we are using Nginx. We are using HA
Right.
proxy. There are multiple, lot of
Okay.
teams, and they are using their own whatever they are comfortable with. So, but yes, we do have a lot
Okay.
of load balancers for sure.
All right. So even AWS has offerings of three types of load balancers essentially. There is an application load balancer, network load balancer, and gateway load balancer. Let me try and give you a little overview of each of them. So your application load balancer is works at layer 7. So it accepts HTTP and HTTPS traffic.
What's the layer? What do you
Layer
mean by layer?
7, the application layer.
No, I mean I'm completely lost. What is layer?
Okay,
What
so yeah, so when we talk about OSI model, okay, the network layers that
OSI
we have,
model? All right.
yes,
What is that?
so that's the networking layers that we have, right? Starting
Ah,
from
I
our,
think
yeah,
I
from
read
our
about that
physical
in college.
data,
The
yeah,
7 layers of OSI.
yes,
Is that the one you're
yes.
referring to?
Yes, yes. So the
Ah,
topmost layer
hmm.
is the application layer, so layer 7. So your
Okay.
application load balancer is
Mhm.
generally used for your web applications. Okay,
Okay.
so in case of network load balancer,
Mhm.
the difference is that it works at layer 4 and at the transport layer, and it accepts TCP and UDP type of traffic, and just a little kind of differentiation so you know where you would use each of them. So some
Mhm.
use cases that I'll probably like to tell you about. Just give me a minute. Okay, so say you want to use application load balancer. So some of the use cases where you would use it is, like I said, for routing HTTP and HTTPS traffic, and it's generally used for microservice based applications, web applications where you want to
No, that
distribute the load.
That actually reminds me of something.
Hmm,
I was about to ask you that. So when you say load balancers again,
hmm,
we have this internal architecture. Again, I'm assuming that is based on microservices where we have,
yeah.
for example, let's say example.com/home. We
Hmm,
have a separate set of instances, and then we
right.
have let's say example.com/project1 or project X.
Yes.
Right? So that is, we have a separate set of instances. In fact, if you talk about, let's say, 10 different microservices,
Hmm,
it is possible that some of them are currently on virtual machine based architecture, some of them are
hmm,
on containers, and we are actually planning to put some of them on serverless architectures as well, to put on Lambda.
right. Right.
So do we have a possibility of routing if somebody comes in to, let's say, example.com, and based on
Hmm.
which component they are looking at, um, do we have this possibility to move the traffic accordingly or move the user accordingly to those 3 different places?
Yes, absolutely. So, like you correctly said, the targets, as we call them, in case of load balancer terminology, the targets in case of your application load balancer could be your ECS, EKS, containerized workloads. It could
Okay.
be IP endpoint. It could be lambdas.
Mm.
It could be EC2s as well, right? Or it
Okay.
could be servers on premises as well. In case of network load balancer, you just have all of them except lambda as a target. And as you were saying, in microservice based architecture, you have multiple services that you want to route to. So
Mhm.
if you want to do content based routing, right, based on the path, as you said,
Okay.
or it could be based on the IP address, the host name, it could be based on some headers or query string parameters. If that kind of routing you want to do, then you will go for an application load balance in that case.
Okay.
However, if your requirement is that you want to have like millions of connections coming in to the picture, you want low latency and high throughput, like say like a batch job you want to run, then that kind of thing, network load balancer would be a good choice for you, right?
Okay.
Because it does not do content based routing, so it does not have that overhead of opening up the request and looking into it. So speed
Mhm.
is the key over here, right? So we have both of these two. And I also mentioned we had gateway load balancer. Okay, so
Mhm.
now in case of gateway load balancer, let me just show you what is the purpose of that. Okay, so a gateway load balancer basically distributes your traffic, incoming traffic, amongst third party firewall appliances, intrusion detection and prevention system appliances. So you could be having many appliances like this, right, from different companies. So you can be having many appliances from all such companies. So if
Mhm.
you want to distribute
So
the
actually, that's
load
good time
which is
because we
coming
do
in,
have Palo Alto and Checkpoint. We have some
right?
appliances we are using from them. So you're telling me I can use them directly? I mean, how does it differ? How will it be different from what we are using now versus when we use Gateway Load Balancer?
So the gateway load balancer will act like your single point of entry, where you can for all the traffic which is flowing out from your applications, as
Mhm.
well as incoming internet traffic, ingress traffic, they will actually be inspected by these appliances, and you can have a gateway load balancer in front of them, so it can distribute the load
Okay.
also. So if you
Okay.
see this architecture over here, so
Mhm.
say for incoming traffic, you can see there is incoming traffic which is coming in, and it is going via this VPC endpoint into the gateway load balancer, which is sitting in a different VPC, and it is distributing the traffic amongst this, and there's inspection which will happen, right? Similarly, in case of outgoing also, if you see the blue lines now, when there's outgoing traffic from your application, it will go via the load balancer, get the inspection done, and then go out via the internet gateway, right?
So is it
So
that not something which is done by a network load balancer or a application load balancer as well? I mean, what's the difference between let's say an application load balancer and a gateway load balancer?
So, as I said, application load balancer, network load balancer will distribute amongst your application compute sources, right?
Okay.
EC2, Lambda, ECS, EKS, or maybe some IP endpoints.
Hmm.
Whereas this is distributing amongst third-party firewall appliances, right? So that's the speciality and the difference between the two.
Do
Yeah. So I'll.
we can you point me in a direction, Purna, where we have I mean, because we have a lot of, I mean, I don't want to put all of these things now at the moment, but we have things
Hmm,
like static IPs. In a lot of applications, we use session cookies
hmm.
as well. And I'm assuming you will have some sort of support. But if, let's say, we want to check, like, what is the supported by ALB, what is supported by NLB, is there a place I can go and check all the features? Can I do
Yes,
that?
absolutely. So there is a table that you can see
Ah,
amongst the features. You can see it in our
that's
website. I'll
exactly
probably
what I
share
was
this
looking
with
for,
you.
like, a
Yeah.
tabular format where every feature. Do you have session cookies there? Is it mentioned um, somewhere? Is it supported by any of the load
Session.
balancers?
There is static
Maybe
IPs
probably
definitely
do a
which you
control
did
F. We
mention.
can do that.
Yeah. So I'll probably come back to you about the session cookies, but
Uh,
there is
Yeah,
definitely
I saw at
static
the bottom
IP.
you have this SSL offloading as well. So that's a good point.
Yes.
We have
Yeah.
those certificates in place, and we want to make sure that we
Yeah.
don't want to use them internally because encryption takes a lot of time. It slows down the application. So that's a good feature.
Definitely. Yeah. So
Is
so
it
so it's
is it supported by all of them? SSL offloading.
yeah, so you can see it's being supported by all three of them over here.
All three. Okay.
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 Okay,
All
so
right.
and it integrates with ACM, that is our Amazon Certificate Manager. So the whole life
Ah, okay.
cycle of the certificates also is very seamlessly integrated. So it will manage the certificates, the renewal, etc. So it
Mhm.
integrates with ACM as well. So that's a great advantage. And like you correctly said, that SSL offloading, which is nothing but decryption of the request that is coming in before it gives it to its target. So the targets don't have that overhead of going and doing encryption and decryption. So
So
that's also
you're
a
telling
great
me
feature.
if I don't, because currently I believe I have to check again, but I believe we're using I think VeriSign or DigiCert. We are using one of them, the certificate authority.
Hmm.
So you're telling me that we have a service in AWS where I can
Yes.
configure my own certificate manager. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
All
There
right,
is.
that's wonderful.
Yeah. Probably I'll just share the link with you a little later. Okay.
Yes, that will be great. I would
Yeah.
probably need all of these resources later on from you, what we have discussed.
Definitely. Yeah. So this
All
is
right.
the AWS Certificate Manager. Yeah, and
Oh,
probably I'll share
oh,
this with you so you'll get a little
yes, yes,
more idea
SSL
about it.
ASM. Yes, perfect. Thank you. Okay, one more
Uh,
question. I mean, all this while we have been talking
hmm,
about all these are like unplanned outages, right? We have where we
hmm,
have situations where something went down
hmm,
accidentally or because of some, misconfiguration or whatever.
right.
But of course we are working on multiple application components, multiple microservices, and we have these upgrades all the time. And at this point, the upgrades, whenever they happen, we typically do it on weekends to have a better maintenance window. We do go through that model of RFCs, request for
Hmm,
change and all.
hmm.
Yeah, that's what I was actually looking for. I've heard in the market that my one of my DevOps engineers, he was telling that you don't need to have a downtime anymore. You can do sort of live upgrades. What is
Yes.
that? How does that work?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. Resilience is even at the time of deployment. So, when, as you correctly said, when we are updating our applications, or probably even when we are changing, we have, say, instances in our auto scaling group, and we are making some changes in their AMIs, possibly, or we are changing their user data. That time also we need to change those instances or update them, right?
Mhm,
So, that time we can use mechanisms such as blue green deployments or canary deployments. So canary deployment is a strategy where we do gradual change. So a small amount of traffic is being sent to a new version,
mhm,
and once we are satisfied and there are no alarms which have gone off, then we redirect the rest of the traffic to the new version. So we are gradually trying out before we send the entire production traffic. That's one mechanism. Or we can have blue green. In
mhm,
blue green we have two identical environments, where blue is the stable environment and green is the new version. So what we do is we create two identical environments, and as soon as we have tested our a new environment thoroughly,
mhm,
then we move all our production traffic to
mhm,
our green one, and that becomes the blue. Okay, so a good thing over here is rollbacks are easier in both these
mhm.
kinds of deployments. Obviously, like, depending upon what kind of compute you are using, the deployment strategies will change. So let me just show you. Mm, I'll probably I had, let see. So I think I've lost that window where I'll share that with you, where we had the different deployment strategies. So based on whether you're choosing EC2 or Lambda or ECS or EKS, the
Mhm,
strategies will change. It is basically rolling. Like I was showing you the slide over here. We do not go and replace all the instances instantly. We
mhm.
do it in batches. Okay, so that's called rolling
Ah,
deployment. So that's
okay.
also
If
a
I got this
resilience
right,
mechanism.
if let's say we have 10 instances serving a
Hmm,
web traffic, so
hmm.
what you will do is, or what we can do is we can take those two instances at a time. We can create a batch,
Yes.
and
Hmm.
then at any given point in time, we have two instances getting updated and eight
Correct.
instances serving the traffic.
Right.
So my
Right.
instances are getting updated, but at the same time, my application is still available for
Correct.
my users.
So
Okay.
we maintain a certain level of healthy instances, so that not all there is complete disruption or complete changeover to the new one. Okay, so
Okay.
certain percentage will always remain available.
So I think that's the one when you have the blue green one, where when you have this blue is the existing one, and then you replace that with the green one. So that's like all at once you do.
Yes,
Um,
all at once.
okay,
Right.
okay.
So it's a one step changeover that we do, whereas canary is a little more gradual.
Hmm, hmm. Okay, interesting. So, and again, I'm assuming there will be some place you have all the documentation. How does it work? Because
Yes.
I'm again concerned that we have virtual machines, we have containers, we have serverless,
Yes.
and of
Yeah.
course, how we tackle these different deployments will be different in
Yeah.
these environments, right? Because we
Yeah.
have, of course, container images, we have Lambda code has to be updated. So I'm assuming all of these
Yeah.
things will be.
So generally, you will have rolling also in case of ECS and EKS, where you will be updating a certain number of tasks or pod at a time, not all at one shot,
All
right?
right.
So they'll be different based on which type of compute you're using. Like in case of EC2, we have in place we have canary and blue green. right? So I'll share some documentation with you where you
Sure.
can have a look in detail about that, right?
Perfect.
And in general also, I would suggest that there are these best practices which I'll tell you
Mhm.
about. Like when we talk about resilience, there are two pillars, that is our reliability pillar and operational excellence pillar. And if you see over here, the design principles of our reliability pillar also kind of hints towards resiliency. So it says
Uh-huh.
automatic recovery of failure, testing recovery procedure. So obviously you have your strategy in
What is
place,
this,
but
by
if
the
you
way?
do not,
I didn't get you. What is this design principle? Where did you get this?
so we have something called as a well architected framework in
I know
AWS.
about
So
that. Yes.
yeah,
Okay.
so there are these six pillars, and out of those six pillars we have two pillars: the reliability pillar and
Mm-hmm.
the operational excellence pillar. So in both of these, if you see in the design principles, there is mention about certain best practices when it comes to resilience, how to build your resilience, how to resume operations after a disruption. So you can see these are some
Okay,
of
so
the, yeah,
for each pillar, we have these corresponding documentation, and in that, for
yes,
each pillar, we have design principles, what to do, what the best
right,
practices, and things
absolutely,
like that.
right.
Oh,
We in
okay.
fact even have a tool. It's called as well architected framework tool, and Ashish will be probably guiding you with much more detail in
Oh,
that
okay.
and lesser sessions.
All right.
And where you can just have a architectural review, and it will ask you questions, something very similar to this. Let me show you an example. So something like this. So under the reliability pillar, there'll be questions asked. So for example, how do you design your workload to withstand component failures? And
Mm-hmm.
there are a couple of options. You need to choose from those options, and based on your answer, you will get a review whether you have a resilient workload or not. What are you at, high risk or medium risk? So you will get some findings based on your answers. So this is a very good tool that you can use to review your workload as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. So this gives me the tool which you're talking about. This gives me an understanding of what I understood is that you have a benchmark sort of thing. You have a checklist,
Yes,
and then it
yes,
tells you whether you are doing it or not. Like once you answer that, it gives you. I'm assuming it'll give you some sort of
findings,
recommendations, some best
recommendations.
practice what you should be doing if you're not doing that
Yes,
already.
yes, yeah.
Okay,
It will
interesting.
not only highlight the risk, it will also try to give you some recommendation to resolve them as well. So it'll do both.
Hmm. Okay, very interesting. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll
Fine.
share the documents with you for both
Yes,
these pillars as well.
I
Yeah.
would need all of them definitely because I need to discuss with a lot of people behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Okay, in the interest of time, I believe probably this is going to be our my last question for you, and
Hmm.
before we move on to the next section,
Hmm.
is that I had this. You would know that I know about auto scaling groups that it helps you in automated scaling in and out of your instances. You can create, you can terminate. I understand that part.
Hmm.
But what I was curious about is two factors. One thing is that what if, we have recently purchased few reserved instances. We have taken some savings plans as well, all of those, things. And then on top of that, we do have, we want to utilize on demand and spot instances as and when we can. So can we do a mix and match of all of these instances using autoscale when we have autoscaling groups and when we have, let's say, 50 or 20 or 100 instances behind the scenes, it is working. Do we have an option of mixing and matching these instances? That's the first question.
Yes.
And the second question I had on the same lines is that what happens if, let's say, an instance gets created or terminated, especially when it is terminated, right,
Hmm.
automatically? I want to capture that whatever happened in that instance, let's say the logs or the data, I want to capture that before the instance gets terminated. So essentially,
Hmm.
we have a script, we have multiple scripts, and I want to run
Okay.
some post scripts, if you will. I want to run
Okay.
them before the instance is completely terminated. Is there a way? Do you have those mechanisms in place in
Yes.
autoscaling?
Yes. So let me get to it one by one. So, firstly, yes, you can diversify your fleet, as we call it. So, the
Okay.
fleet of instances can be made up of different instance types. So, you
Uh-huh.
can see clearly over here, this auto scaling group has instances belonging to different instance types. They
Okay.
can also belong to different price or purchase options. So you can have a mix of instances belonging to savings plan, on demand, as well as spot instance. So you can do that as well.
Oh, okay.
Generally you will see there will be fleets where there'll be a certain percentage which is all on demand, and a certain percentage will be for spot instances. So the on
Right.
demand is like a backup. Even if all your spot instances get taken away, you still have a healthy ratio of instances to serve
That's
traffic.
exactly what I was looking for, because
Yes.
spot instances, the problem with them is they can be
Hmm.
reclaimed back by
Right.
AWS, right? So we always have that
Right.
concern. What if the whole we can't have 100% on spot instances? And I see that you have
Absolutely.
mentioned that you have different types of instances, so M4 large, M5 large,
Hmm.
medium. So I can do a mix and match of the instance type,
Yes.
and I
Yes.
can do a mix and match of whether I want spot, some percentage of a spot, some of on demand, some of savings plans. I can do both of these combinations.
Yes, you can
Available.
do that. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good.
So in fact, when you are setting up what we call as a launch template, so when you are setting up your auto scaling group, let me just get to that. You need to create something called as a launch template, which has the specifications, right? What kind of AMI you want, instance type, security group, roles,
Mhm.
everything you mention over there. In that launch template, you can specify which type of instances you prefer. You can even choose instances based on instance attribute. So if you have some time, I could show you on the console also. There is a place where you can specify like how much vcpu, how much memory you want, and based on that it will recommend certain instance types which you can choose. Or
Mm.
you can go ahead and make this template completely in YAML or JSON format, like I said, and you can see you can specify it in the form of a template. So one question you
What
had
is what
was
is this
like,
template, by the way? I did not get that. Where did
it's a
YAML or
launch template. It's a
no? I
launch.
know it's a
YAML
launch
is
template, but
a
where is YAML and YAML came from? We didn't talk about YAML,
yeah. So
did we?
one way of you setting up your launch template is through
Mm.
the console, right? So you can go over
Okay.
here in the console. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
if you see here, you can go and define your template here itself.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, so if
I know that. I know
I
that. We can.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I know that
so
part.
one way I can do it from here, right? So
Right.
that is
Right.
click ops. So I will go and specify, and since we are here, I'll show you okay, so over here you can choose your AMI, etc. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and if you go to advanced option, like I was telling you, you can specify even your attributes, the number of vcpus,
Ah.
memory, and all.
Okay.
So instead of going and mentioning everything over here, right,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you can actually go and templatize it. You can create a template, and in the language of YAML or JSON format, you can write it. So this is a highly declarative or a low code way of mentioning the same things. So for example, over here you can see that it has mixed instance
No,
policy
no,
over here, right?
something
Hmm.
similar. At the moment, we are doing it using.
Huh.
There is a tool which we are using called Terraform. Is that something on those lines? What
Yes.
is this?
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah, so Terraform would be similar to say your cloud formation template. So launch template
so
is
this is a
similar
cloud
to,
formation template. Is that what you have on a screen? What is that?
so you can include this within a cloud formation template. This is a launch template. This is not a cloud formation template, but you can include this as a part of your cloud formation template as well.
Ah, all right.
That
Okay.
is possible.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so
That's
over
like
here you can
yes.
see that we have this mixed policy, like you were asking me, can we have mixed, and where we have a mixed of on demand instances also and spot. And
Mm-hmm.
when we are choosing our spot instances, we can mention the type of strategy. There are different types of
Ah,
strategies.
okay.
For
Okay.
me, cost might be very, I want spot
Mhm.
instances which is the cheapest, so I can go for the one with the lowest cost. Or I want to pick up spot instances which has the deepest pool, meaning the less chances of interruption, then I can go for capacity
Ah,
optimize.
okay.
Or I want the best of both worlds. So there are different types of strategy which I can mention over here. Yeah, and if I want to choose instances based on attributes, like I was just showing you, you can mention over here as well. So anything that I was doing on the console, I can templatize it and do it via this
Mm.
launch template as well. Okay, and
Nice.
now comes to your question about what if there's an interruption. Okay, so
Hmm.
if we there is a feature called as capacity rebalancing. So if
Okay.
we choose this feature and we set it to true, what we are essentially saying is, before we decommission or terminate the interrupted instance, we want a replacement to come for it. Okay, so we want that replacement to come before we terminate that. Okay,
Hmm.
so that's the meaning of capacity rebalancing. That is one thing. And the other question I think you asked me was like, if there are certain actions that you want to do when a scale out or a scale in happens, right?
Right, right.
So
So basically,
so
I mean, to give you a very small example, I want to collect all the logs before the instance
hmm,
completely goes off.
hmm,
I want to capture those logs and put it somewhere, and I have a small script to do that. But I want
hmm,
to run that script somehow. How do I do that?
right. So that's where I think you can use life cycle hooks, right? So
Okay.
when a scale in, when it instance is terminated, or a scale out when an instance is launched, when that happens, if you are making use of life cycle hooks, what you can do is you can make that instance wait. It goes into something called as a wait period, in which you can do some kind of automation. So for example, in your case, you want to go and download all the logs before it gets terminated. So what we can do is, we can say, we can call some lambda function which will download the logs, and then only the instance will be fully terminated. Or when you're launching an instance, say you want to pull down certain software or install certain applications,
Hmm. Hmm.
that also can be done via lifecycle
So
hooks.
you
So
have
that feature
lifecycle
is
hooks
also there.
for pre tasks and post tasks. You can do it for both the
Yes,
purposes. Okay,
for
perfect.
both, for
Right,
both
very
you
good.
can do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice discussion, everyone. This is good going on, and obviously the time is critical. So I am just being a scarecrow here, like somebody mentioned. Now there was an interesting discussion, and we got lots of insight on how communication happens, what is a concept of availability, and all. Sharik, there was a specific question for you that in real life scenario, who would be? Would you be a CTO of a company? Would you be a technical person? Would you be a CIO of a company? What do you think the role you were playing?
Oh, for me, I was more like generic, and in my head, I was playing all these roles interchangeably. But yes,
Okay,
in real time scenarios, it will typically start at the top level and then go down gradually, right? So it will
exactly,
start like CEO and then director, then the engineering head, and then of course because see, I mean, again, Prasad will be able to explain in more detail because he's dealing with these things on a daily basis. But generally, you start at the top and then you move talk eventually you talk to the actual developers or the DevOps engineers, and who are the people who are actually working on those technologies.
exactly.
So that's what you will do.
Makes
I
sense.
think,
Thank you so much. Yeah,
Ashish,
go
I
ahead, go
have a
ahead.
homework for the audience before
Okay,
we
good, good. Please go ahead.
because we didn't have time, so I'll give it as a homework for all of you. So because we were talking about resilience, so obviously as an organization, how would you measure your resilience, right? What are the KPIs? So
Mm.
these are some of the KPIs. That is mean time between failure, MTBF, MTTR, that is mean time between recovery, right? Redundancy level, how much level of redundancy in terms of availability zones, data centers, that is built into your system. This is actually change failure rate. So every time you make a change, what is the percentage of the time that failures are happening? Scalability and fault tolerance. So these are some of the KPIs, and I would want you all to go and research a little bit about each of them, so that will give you some idea. And also, just to let you know that resilience is not standalone. There are these quality attributes also which go hand in hand, right? If you don't have a secure system, there is going to be breach, systems are going to be going down as well. So these terms will be used even in your exams, also in your certification exams. Is this the most secure solution? Is this the most scalable solution? Is this a very highly available solution? Which one is the most highly available one? So you need to understand these terms. And like I said, these ones, the KPIs, are your homework. You can go and research about it. Ashish will be sharing the slides, so you can go over them later as well.
Makes
Yeah,
sense.
Ashish,
Yeah,
over to
means
you.
all these slides would be available. We would be sending email. I'll talk about emails also in a minute. But yeah,
Hmm.
thank you everyone. Thank you for sharing it. Now, Sharik and Parna, we had a good role play. Obviously, a lot of information. I would try to explain few of the things through analogies so that people can retain this knowledge for a longer period. So let me
Sure.
know when you see the screen. Is it visible or no?
No, now I think it's
Not yet.
coming. Yep.
Is it flashing or is it
It,
study?
Flashing. I can
it
see
is
RTO and
flashing.
RTO flashing. Yeah.
It is
Flashing.
flashing.
I have to stop the screen share. Give me a minute.
Should I
And
stop mine?
uh, shouldn't
Maybe.
have a problem, but I'm not sure why it is
Okay.
flashing on my
Okay.
side.
Try now.
Give me a minute. I'll try to show it again. So I just want to give people few analogies so that they can relate to their day-to-day stuff. Let me add to stage now. Okay, good. Now better.
Yeah, it's good.
So thank you. Parna and Sharika, I'll remove you from the stage so that you could take some sigh of breathe and drink some water. A lot of discussion happened, so I'll let you enjoy your free time. Thank you. Now, I'm talking a little bit on the concept of RPO and RTO, and these are analogies. Obviously, not exact same scenario, but yeah, it will give you some idea to retain that knowledge for a longer period. So, let's first talk about RPO and RTO. When we talk about RPO, that is a very brutal question I could ask to a business that, hey, how much data you can afford to lose, that you may lose that data and you would be still okay with that. And when I have this conversation with top level executive, the answer always comes that we don't want to lose any data. RPO should be zero, no data loss. Yes, we can do that, but obviously there is a cost associated with that. And then when I go and talk to technical people, then we can further drill down that, okay, how much data will be lost when a disaster happens. Obviously, it will depend on your backup or replication schedule. So if you decided that I am going to take a daily backup every day at 10 p.m., means your RPO is 24 hours because you may lose up to 24 hours worth of data. If you said no, I am going to take a weekly backup, then as your backup frequency or replication frequency increases, your RPO recovery point objective will keep on increasing. So as soon as you take backup, as many time as you take backup, you would have a better RPO in this particular case. And if somebody says I am going to take a monthly backup, then it would be a 1 month RPO, and it depends on application to application. Not every application would require this type of 1 hour RPO or 2 hour RPO. So it purely depends. You decide based on criticality of the application. So RPO equals to backup or replication schedule. Talking about RTO, think of RTO as time to change the wheel. So if you have a spare wheel in your car and if your one of the wheel gets flattened, you would stop the car and replace the wheel. If you had a spare wheel with you, RTO will be few minutes. In few minutes you would be able to recover. But if you do not have a spare wheel, then you have to maybe wait for somebody to help you out, get a wheel fixed, or maybe call an engineer or call a mechanic on site and help you out. So having a spare wheel, having a spare to recover from gives you less RTO. Otherwise, RTO would be higher if you do not have a spare wheel. So this is what my explanation of RPO RTO will be in terms of analogy. Next is load balancing. I explain it through an example. Let's say consider you have a king, and obviously king would be getting lots of letters or messages, and he may not have time to reply to all of them. So a lot of messages are coming in. So what he does, he appoints a secretary, and secretary's job is to read all the emails or post which is coming up and then only forward it to the king if it is of important, right? So now the secretary has to filter messages. What could be the message filtering mechanism? One mechanism she could use is to just read the header information. Check where the letter is coming from, where it is going, who sent it, what time, which city, and based on that filtering can happen. That can be one method. Or if king authorizes this person, she can open the letter and check the content of the letter and then only relay the information. So if the forwarding decision is being based on the content, then it is going to be a application layer load balancer who decide what is in the content. Based on that HTTP header, it will forward the content to the king or to the target destination. Whereas here you would be have a network layer load balancer who is just reading the header of the IP address or header of the packet, and based on that deciding. Obviously, forwarding just by looking at the header is faster. That's why network load balancer are faster. But opening up a letter, reading the content, will be taking more time, and that's why comparatively application layer load balancer can be little slower, but obviously you have multiple method to improve performance in that cases too. So that would be my example of delivering letter to the king. We also talked about canary deployment. Canary is a word which comes from coal mines. In old days, when people used to go into coal mines, there was no harmful gas detector that time. So what these coal miner used to do, the coal miner would carry a canary bird with them. Canary is a bird who has a high metabolism, so they require a lot of oxygen. And the another thing about them, they are always chirping. So if you are carrying a canary with you into coal mine, it is chirping, means oxygen levels are good, no harm, and you can keep on working. But if your canary slows down or it stops chirping, that is an indication that there is something poisonous gas is there or the oxygen level are dropping. So coal miners used to carry canary with them, which is like a method of identifying the risk and going beyond the risk once the canary stops singing. Same thing happens into our environment too. So in canary deployment, what we do, we may start with a version 1 of application, and there are multiple methods to implement it. So yeah, I agree, poor canary Satya, but yeah, this was still better than having a human life endangered. Obviously I will not be leaving canary behind, I will run with it, I will not be leaving it to die there. So hopefully they were mindful of that. So here Route 53 is sending all my traffic to application version 1. I could go ahead with canary release and can say, let me go to version 2, but I'll not send all my traffic to version 2. I will gradually replace it to version 2. So as you could see here, this is my application version 2, only 10% of the traffic. And then if I'm happy, I could keep on increasing this number. And now I have gradually coming up to the whole infrastructure being onto the green release. So that's what we can think of a canary release. Now, next one, it is not an analogy, but a differentiation, is about auto scaling. Auto scaling is a general term in AWS, and a lot of time people get confused with what is auto scaling actually. There are three types of auto scaling in AWS. First is Amazon EC2 auto scaling. Second is AWS auto scaling, and third one is called AWS application auto scaling. Right? So as the name says, EC2 auto scaling just focuses on Amazon EC2. But if you have an application where you have a database also, where you have containers also, where you have EC2 machines also, I don't want to manually create those complicated auto scaling plan individually. So instead of creating auto scaling plan for individual services, I could create one auto scaling plan and it can engulf multiple services in that. That is what we refer as AWS auto scaling. You could utilize that. And then comes application auto scaling. In case you want to go beyond your traditional architectures, like you want to auto scale your app stream or Amazon EMR or Neptune cluster, that time you can use AWS auto scaling. That is going to be done through CloudFormation template. It is not a built-in feature into the console. You need to engineer that solution within your environment, and then you can come up with these three types of auto scaling. So it depends on what you want to utilize for your application, and it will probably be a combination of multiple, not one single thing on that. Another thing, I am trying to answer as many questions I can through 1 minute YouTube videos and answers. So check for that. You could find them on my Udemy channel, my YouTube channel, analogiescloud.com. You could find it there. And one more announcement is here for new members. Some of you have joined us for first time. We share weekly resources. So in case you have not shared your email address, please send it to me or Prasad so we can include you into the weekly email things which we send every time. So hopefully this gives you an idea. Now I want to talk a little bit further on a product which we have, which is called Cloud Career Journey. Why I'm talking? Because we are starting the group mentoring from next month. So what we did as Prasad and I, this is a side project we have done. We have created a Cloud Career Journey book, and then question from Shukla, where to send? You could send it on us LinkedIn, should not be a problem. So send it on LinkedIn and you should be able to, we should be able to add you into the list. Okay. So with this Cloud Career Journey Starter Kit, it is like for people who want to build the career maybe in 6 to 12 month time frame. They need sandboxes, they need training. You should be able to utilize this particular kit on cloudcareerjourneys.com, and you should be able to get access to 6 months of VizLab platform, the whole platform, as well as plural sites. So you could learn soft skills also, technical skills also, and move on. And this will also give you access to monthly mentoring session, which we are planning. And the next monthly mentoring session will be starting on 1st June. We tried to got information from people who bought the starter kit, and this is how the tentative agenda is looking like now. A lot of people are interested to learn about how we will create our cloud learning plan. So we would be utilizing this thing, and then we will be hosting session on the 1st June. So I'm going through a lot of information. You can rewatch this video, slow it down, and that should give you sufficient information about all of these things. One more thing, in case some of you are higher level up onto your technical journey and you want to learn a little bit more on data analytics, I published recently a training on data analytics. It's a very basic, but it will give you a good understanding of various services which are available, and it is free. So you can search on Udemy for my name and you should be able to get into data analytics training. That is going to be giving you some basic information about the whole data pipeline on AWS and how different services fit together into it. All right. Also, with every session, we are selecting few people who are active, who are helping us to spread word about BESA, or who are helping others by summarizing the content of the session. So for them, we have a giveaway where we give a book, which is Cloud Career Journey, and we give 10 sandbox environment from VizLab as part of this. So this is what we do every week, and then we also send an email where you can get discount for Cloud Career Journey book or starter kit, and there would be weekly giveaways, and at the end we will be having premium plus subscription to be given also. That's how we would be moving forward, and these are the winners for last week. Most of you should have received the email and content details. In case you are still struggling, reach out to us and we would be happy to answer these. Shouldn't be a problem. One more thing I want to talk about is we have a lot of questions coming up on comparison of different things. So what I have here on my website, I have created this list, and in this we have put together informations related to different components, like what is site to site VPN versus direct connect, a 5-minute video and a PDF file, what is block and file, what is your security group and network ACL, scalability and elasticity. So please go ahead and read this. This is short videos but give you sufficient information to compare these components which are mostly highly misunderstood. Like here we have Amazon EC2 auto scaling versus AWS auto scaling, application versus network load balancer. So you should be able to use these all things. All right. Now I'll hand it over to Prasad, because we have a lot of people who are not sure that how to access VizLab environment. They got that kit, but how they can best utilize it. I would probably let Prasad handle this information. Prasad, over to you. You want to share a screen? Probably you're on mute, Prasad.
Hey, hello everyone. Yes, I will share my screen. Give me one sec. Screen two. Okay. First of all, thank you, Parna and Sharik, for another insightful session. I loved it. And thank you, Richard and Kapil. You have been like answering all the questions behind the scenes. That's really great. And obviously, Ashish, Analogies guru, really insightful analogies that we have seen. And Ashish, you should be reading the comments later on if you are not read. Really good things about your analogies here. Uh, yeah, what I'm going to show right now is that in case if you are the winner of one of the VizLab sandbox, how you'd be able to access it. And in case if you have purchased the book, you would be having 1 month access to VizLabs, and that will not be just access to VizLab AWS sandbox. So who are getting the free, they are getting this 3 months AWS sandbox environment for free. But if with the book, we are provided 1 month access to the entire VizLabs platform, which will include the courses and learning paths and everything. I'll show that in a moment. But let's first look into the 3 months AWS sandbox environment. Who like anyone who is getting it for free by winning it every week. You will not be seeing all other sandboxes in your environment. You will be seeing only AWS sandbox in your environment. And when you click on access now, it creates a sandbox environment. It'll ask you for how long you would like to do a lab or something like that, for the number of hours, and max is 9 hours. So let's say if you're planning to do a couple of hours or 1 hour hands-on labs in your environment, so you can click on create sandbox environment. It'll take a couple of minutes to create an environment, a provision and environment. So I'll give it a minute. So here it has
Yeah,
created an environment.
Prasad, people who do not know what a sandbox is, can you elaborate what a sandbox is?
Okay. So in case if you want to do hands-on exercise, you would be needing AWS console. One way is to have a AWS free tier account, and AWS free tier account you would be able to create. Uh, so you should be able to sign up and create a AWS free tier account, which gives quite a good amount of free services. It shows you what all it provides you for free, right? And you should be able to use that, but you need a credit card. And in case if you have exhausted your AWS free tier account, or if there are services which are not available here, and you would like to have an environment where you want to do the hands-on, that's where the sandbox environment comes into picture. And that's what WizLabs do provide, sandbox environments, along with few other training providers do provide sandbox environments. But WizLabs has been kind enough to provide, like few sandboxes for the BESA team members that we distribute every month with, every week with for 10 people. Cool. Uh, Once this is provisioned, you have an option about opening the console, and this is what's going to open the AWS console. So when you click on this open console, it automatically adds the account ID, and you need to add the IAM username and password, which it provides here, the username and the password. Access key and secret key is there if in case if you want to do the CLI. So when you do this and you click on sign in, it is going to open the AWS console. And here you should be able to use your, like any service that you would like to use. Obviously, it will have its own restrictions, and what all is available. If I show WizLabs AWS Sandbox, it also provides about all the services. So these are all the services that are provided for free, or if you have the Access Sandbox, you will be able to use all of these services. So anything that is available here in this page, you should be able to come here and use and access it. So create a S3 bucket, create a static uh, website, so on and so forth. You should be able to do all those hands-on labs here. So that's the benefit for 3 months. If you win, you would be having the access to it. Let me look if there are any questions, or Ashish, in case if you're looking to the questions, if there's any specific questions, then let me know.
Was a
When does the
question
three?
that
Yeah.
question was there if the WizLab is part of AWS. Answer is no. WizLab is an independent company. They maintain their own portfolio of products, so this is not part of it. And then another was that how do I get access to these sandboxes? So obviously you could buy them if you want from them, or you can spread word about BESA, and we may pick up 10 winner every week who would be given access to this sandbox. One thing I want to clarify that the winner get access to sandbox, not the whole WizLab platform. So
Yeah.
in Cloud Career Journey book, there is a full access given, but here it is just a sandbox access which is given to you, and you can practice a lot using these sandboxes. So obviously, don't keep your personal data in that because it would be wiped clean and it is a shared environment sometime. So best would be to use AWS Sandbox to practice. How to find information or resources to practice? Probably you should be looking at to workshops.aws, and that should give you good information on what you can practice, what type of technology you want to use. So you should be able to use. And yeah, that's what 12-week workshop Prasad has created. Let's talk about that.
So 12 weeks workshop, it provides, like a structured learning plan while doing the access, like while doing the hands-on labs. And each of these workshops, if you click here, it will take you to a AWS workshop. And then there are modules which are basic as well as advanced that you can do. And you will be able to do these, like it has instructions of how you can do with the screenshots and everything. You should be able to do that in the WizLab sandbox, or in your own free tier account. Anywhere if there is a cost, ensure that if you're doing in your account, have those billing alerts so that it does not exceed the cost. And always deprovision. There is another question that when does the WizLab access starts? Whenever you would first log in. So once you get the access, We send you the credentials, and whenever you first log in, that's when it will start. Whenever uh, start utilizing it. There was another question about how long the sandbox would be there. As I showed, while provisioning the sandbox, you can provision it from 1 hour to 9 hours. So ensure that you have in mind what you want to practice and do it in that time frame. Because once you are done the time frame, if I, like for example, if I click on end sandbox here, it'll say that destroy, and that's what's going to happen when the time is going to be up. It is going to actually remove all the resources that you have provisioned. Otherwise, it will keep on incurring the cost. But if you are doing it in your uh, account, then ensure that you do manually remove all the resources. If you're using cloud formation script, just remove that. If you have manually done it, ensure that you delete those resources. So I'm going to end the sandbox. There's a question: is starter kit available on discount, please? Yes, starter kit available on discount. Let me send the link right away.
Prasad, I don't know why, but your voice is like there is a sound coming up. So if you can lower your microphone boom,
Hello,
yeah,
is it
probably.
better now?
Little bit
Hold
still there, but yeah, still better. Still, let me. Not sure why. No, you can't hear you now. I mean, there is some sound coming up. I'm not sure if others are hearing too. It's like a voice sound coming up sometimes.
Any better now?
It's better echo, but better than previous one.
Okay,
So,
okay. Not sure why the setting is like that. But yeah, for the question, the starter kit discount available? Yes, starter kit discount is available. Let me share the link here in the chat. So starter kit, as Ashish mentioned, it includes a lot of resources for you. First of all, it includes 6 months access to WizLabs. And when I say 6 months access to WizLabs, it does not only include the AWS sandbox, it includes everything. For example, if I click on my courses here, it includes all the video courses, all the test practice questions, all the labs, and the sandbox for all of it. And it's not just for AWS, it will be available for 266 like courses that they have for your Azure, for your GCP, all of them it includes. And we have provided you 50% discount code for the starter kit. So for $50, you would be able to get access not only for 6 months to the courses. Then we have, I don't think learning pass. I can assign the learning pass if needed. The admin here, but then there are hands-on labs. So you have C9 Forkit hands-on labs that you would be able to do. For example, there's a S3 challenge. If I click on access now, it opens this challenge that you can start doing it. In case if you want to do in your environment, you can do it in your own environment. Otherwise, you can start the challenge, and then what it will do is that it will create a cloud environment, the sandbox, and you will be able to do this challenge in the WizLab sandbox that they have provided. And it's a step-by-step instruction that they have said what you need to do. Here are the lab resources, here are the credentials, and you can open the console and you can do the challenge and ultimately validate it. So you will have all of that once you have 6 months access. All of this is available just with the book for 1 month. With the starter kit, it is available for 6 months. I'll go back here. Sorry, Ashish, you want to say something?
no, that's all. Means that's the good thing. Like 6 month access with the starter kit, 1 month access with the book, and obviously this gives you good enough time to practice. And obviously, unless you practice, you won't learn. You would
Yeah.
retain knowledge for a while, but once you practice, you would be able to retain it for longer periods. So leverage these. If you compare, a lot of people have bought it, they are happy with it. So you should be able to get this information. And if you have
Yeah.
any struggle in buying it, let us know. We would be happy to help you out. Should not be a problem. The
Yeah.
link for the 12-week workshop, Anupama, we will post it into the email. So I'll send an email every week. Probably you will get it by Monday. In the email, we would include the link for this 12-week workshop. Should not be a problem at all.
Pasted it here in case if you would like.
Yeah, paste in the chat also.
Yeah, another minute to talk about the starter kit here. So it includes the ebook automatically when you have the starter kit. And then I said 6 months access to WizLabs. It also includes 6 months access to Pluralsight Premium. Next time, probably Ashish will take some time to demo the Pluralsight also,
Yeah,
because now I know we have
exactly.
a lot of time. And then we have access to other cloud training resources like digital cloud training. We have access to the group mentoring session that Ashish mentioned, and we did it with a poll with everyone who has purchased a starter kit, and The maximum votes have come to the cloud learning plan. So that is what we are going to cover in the monthly group mentoring session. Initially, we were planning to do it on 18th, but then unexpected travel came, for me and for Ashish both. So we are shifting it to next month, 1st June is when we'll be having that. Starter Kit also includes roadmaps from few of the, like Nana Chasia, John Bone. So you might be here, knowing these names, industry experts, and they have provided the roadmaps that will be included here, along with
Yep.
few like Code Cloud. I know that a lot of people are fan of Code Cloud, which is really good, and we have 50% voucher for Code Cloud along with it.
Uh, that's all. Means I would say if you have any further question, feel free to reach out. And intention is that we want to give you resources, not just technical but behavioral also, and practice resources also. So obviously, BESA is a good platform for all of you to ask question. We are trying to answer as many as we can. Richard and Kapil are helping us a lot in answering the question. But yeah, if your question get unanswered, reach out to us and we will try our best to answer those questions. Shouldn't be a problem. And have a good week, everyone. Hopefully, we will see you again. If
Let's
your
add
email
Richard and
is,
Sharik again.
yep, we can add them. Let me add. Sorry, by mistake, I removed it. Richard is here. Sharik is here, and here is Parna. Parna, you speak a lot today. It means there was so much content, and obviously you prepared it well. Really, really nice. And Sharik, your
Sharik
question were
grilled me well.
completely he grilled you well.
I had to literally stop her now. Like, wait, breathe, breathe.
Sharik is an actual tough customer, right?
Yeah, a tough customer.
Sharik, I don't ever want to be interviewed by you.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what he's like in an interview.
I agree. Interesting role play. Thanks, Richard, for answering questions. There was some interesting question, and we
No
will
worries.
see you again next week. Everyone, enjoy your week. Learn as much as you can, and help us with feedback so you can improve the session for you. Thank you so much. Good.
Enjoy the
Take care.
weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.